Online for Authors. I'm doing something just a little bit different. I am chatting with Slade Williams as he writes his memoir, Nonprofit. Welcome, Slade.
Hi, thanks for having me, Terry. That's exciting.
I'm super excited. You kind of reached out to me. This is unusual. I typically read someone's book and then have them come on to talk about it. And instead, I read your manuscript, which is still in draft form. There were even some spaces where it said, going to add more here, kind of stuff, right? But we're going to talk about memoir writing, what that entails, the things you have found difficult, the things that have come easily, tips that you might offer other people. We're just going to kind of go back and forth and talk a little bit about this. So I finished your draft. I found your story very compelling. You choose to write from what I see as like 3 different time periods. The past,
Sure. Yep.
as in your childhood past. What I'm going to call more of a near past. So kind of as you have a lot of numbers that come up. And as this started kind of playing a part in your life, that's where we see that. And then the now.
Sure.
As life is happening. It's hard to write on 3 timelines.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it was.
So knowing that, and you're not writing it where we get all of the past and then we get the near past and then it's kind of like, why did you choose to do that to yourself? Because that's a hard way to write.
So the quick and dirty of the topic of the book is my journey seeing what I can only classify as signs, and they're religious based, they're mathematical based, they're calendar based. That sounds absolutely insane. And I get that. And I lean into that in the book because I think that is important, because that is how I felt when they all started coming to me. I didn't know what to expect or what they meant, or if they meant anything. Did they have to mean anything? Right. There were so many things going through my head at that time that I was spinning, and those signs and those numbers and those dates also attached back to my early childhood, and they attached back to timeline of the Bible, and like so many things that are wackadoo. I get it. So I had to also then tell the story of who I am, because if I just told about those signs, that's crazy talk. You would fear for my sanity and my safety from myself.
And potentially my own safety. Right. Yeah.
So you have to, I felt I had to give a good representation of who I am as an individual now, as a child, and that middle past when I was seeing those signs.
When you were first kind of, when they
hit me the way they hit me. Yeah. Because they hit me over the course of maybe 3 years. And then there was 1 week in particular that it was just boom, 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 one thing after another for a week. And it was at the end of that week where I finally came to peace with it. But it wasn't that way for the first year and a half.
Yes.
And add in, owning a business that wasn't doing well at that time. A marriage that had been, 18 years in, and that wasn't doing well at the time. And all these factors happening at one time in my life, it was a lot to handle, right?
Right.
And I could have probably written a book just about that time, but without you getting to experience who I am now and what it means to me now and how it all began for me, I think it wouldn't have been a finished or complete book. So those 3 timelines and blending them together and weaving those together is challenging for sure. I think I did a decent job of it so far.
You did. No, I felt like it was good. Every now and then I did kind of stop and look back, and it was like, oh, that's where we are. Because especially when we were dealing with the rather near past and the present, there's not a lot of time between those.
Sure. Right. Yeah.
We're talking 10 years, right? 5-10 years, right? There's not a lot of space in there. So sometimes it was like, wait, what? Oh, that's where we are. Okay. We're not currently current. This was near past, and so, but I think you did a really good job of it. how, when you were sitting down to write these stories, there's a lot of stories to pick from. I mean, I know in my own life, I'm 62 years old. And if you said, tell me stories of your life, well, I got lots to choose from, but you can't write them all down.
Sure. Right. So I think I want to take you back just a second to when I finally decided I was going to write it.
Okay.
Right. So
yeah.
I had gotten to the point where I was like, I need to write a book about this. I need to share these, again, I'm going to call them signs. You have to read the book to understand.
But kind of this he sees mathematical numbers in ways that all of a sudden seem to represent like why would this happen on this date, and why would those kinds of things is really boiled it down to just a little nutshell. And it often revolves around religious things that you might find in maybe Revelations or in some of the other books in the Bible of prophecy.
Sure. Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
So I got to the point where I was like, I have to share this without sounding crazy. And I finally got to a point where, like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to write my story. I'm going to tell people what I've seen and what it means to me now and all those things. And I'm thinking to myself, I drive for UPS. I'm on the road all day long. Like, I don't have time to write a book. When am I going to do this? And I said, okay, well, maybe. It was just a thought, like a passing thought of like, well, if I were to get hurt at work, then I'd be out of work and actually getting paid for that time. Yeah, well, maybe the very next week I got attacked by a dog and broke 2 ribs. Like, and at that point I was like, all right, I have to write it.
I have to write
now,
it.
Like, this is the sign. Like, clearly I brought that into the reality so far, or somehow is what I mean to say. So I have to do it. So I sat down and I had 6 months or more off where I was just healing. So I would go down and I would sit in the basement at the table, and I would just start to write stories from my life, things I thought were entertaining. That, like you said, we have so many stories in our life. Like, which ones are we going to put in? I knew I wanted to talk about the sign stuff, and I knew I had to take it from the beginning of those to the end of those, which is a 2.5-year period. But if I just wrote those in order, that would be boring and hard to follow, I think, with all the math, right? Because I try to do a good job of keeping the math very simple. And
you do, but even then sometimes, like, and I'm good at math, but I would be following it going, now, wait a minute, what? Why are we adding, okay, what? Oh, now I get, so if you had done that for 200 and some pages, you're right, I would have quit. But we only have a few examples of that let you say, okay, I see what's happening. I see what he's doing.
Right. But, so I had to space those out, right? So I spaced those out by telling the stories of me. And I used the vehicle of online dating.
Yeah.
And getting to know somebody in online dating. It's a miserable, horrible, enjoyable experience. And when you do it, you talk about who you are, who you were, what interesting things have happened to you in your life, right? So it's an easy vehicle to go, oh, well, what was your family like, or what was your mom like? And then boom, you get a story about your mother, or one of the first ones is I'm talking to this woman, her name's Mickey, and I'm talking to her, and she said, I'm so thankful you're not one of those I hate my ex-wife people. And I immediately jump into a story where me and my ex-wife are arguing, because do I hate my ex-wife? No, we have a great experience. We have a great relationship now. We co-parent. Everything is very, very good. I'm at a loss for words right now.
But it's not antagonistic. It is something that the two of you are working together, and it actually is, from what I was reading, it was very beautiful.
We get along so much better now
that you're not married
in this relationship than we did then.
Right.
And it was 20 great years. I don't want to make it all sound bad, because it wasn't. There was a lot of good in there. We just learned we weren't capable of living in the same place together.
Right.
So we went our different ways, but we still, like, my daughter plays softball. Her new husband, myself, my girlfriend, we all sit together. We sit together, we joke together. We have Christmas dinner together. Like it's a good ending to a bad, situation that way.
Right.
If that makes
Right.
sense. So yeah, but I use that online dating, getting to know you type idea to flash back to different moments in my life, and then flash back to even the sign stuff. Like we talk about, it's one of those things you talk about when you get to know somebody. Like, what are your beliefs? Do your beliefs align with my beliefs? Right.
Right.
Because that's a big deal. If you are misaligned, then it's trouble down the road. So those kind of things come up in those conversations when you're getting to know somebody. So I use that to go back and forth in my life. So like you said, I wrote the stories. Like you often ask people, are you a pantser? Are you a plotter? I'm definitely not a plotter. I couldn't do that. It's just something, I don't know how people do that. That is impressive on so many levels. That's not me. I am definitely a pantser. I would sit down and I go, okay, I've got this story I want to tell. I've told it to a million people. They're already tired of hearing it. I'm going to write it down now. And I would write it. And then I would go on another story and I would write it. And then I got to the point where I had these, 40 chapters, if you will, of stories. And I was like, okay, now
I got to figure out how to put them together.
I got to put them together. Right. Exactly.
Right.
So you can see there's a whiteboard still upstairs. It's got all these writings and notes and lines. And it's just that.
And as you're trying to like shove it all in, and it's like, okay, wait, in order to do that, I think I have one more story I have to tell in order to make this go together. Right. No, I can understand that. I too wrote a memoir, and I didn't intend necessarily to write a memoir. I wrote a blog. My husband and I wrote across the United States. I kept a blog every day. I was looking at the blog, trying to make sense of the fact that me, Terry, rode all the way across the United States on a tandem. Like I knew I had done it, but it didn't feel like I had. Like, how did that happen?
Sure.
And so I'm reading the blog, trying to feel it from a different point of view. And I started recognizing all these things that I had learned, and I would jot them down, and then I'd jot them down. And before long, it was like, oh, there's a book there.
Sure.
There's, and so now how do I write it? So the same thing where not all my stories are bicycling stories.
Right.
Some of them are other stories, and you bring those in, and you have to try to explain like who I am when I got started on this ride, for this ride to have made such a difference in my life.
Right. And I now that I've read your book, and I see exactly how it came together for you in that way. And it resonated so much with me, with the different rules that you learned in your ride across the country that are things that I learned and I implemented in my book as well. It's just these things, like I think the first chapter is open your mind. Is that
yeah.
And it's talking about like people come at things from their own perspective, and they bring their own things to the table, and that may not be what works for you. That may not be how you see the world, but you have to open your mind to how they're experiencing the world too. And that resonates so strongly for me, because that's when you go into dating, like, or anything like that, like, what you think and what you bring to the table is your own past, your own history, your own childhood, your own traumas, all those things you're bringing to the table. And that's what makes you, you. And then the other person you're talking to has all their things and they're bringing to the table. And that's what makes them, them. And if you don't have compassion for their things, how can you expect them to have compassion for your things?
Right. And then how do you ever expect to be able to take your things and their things and mush them together and turn it into anything at all? Right. Absolutely. What are some of the hiccups that you've experienced in this whole period? You had the accident. It's been a while. Mm-hmm. So it's not the accident that you had that allowed you to start writing has been a while. It wasn't like yesterday. Right. And and the book's not out yet. So what are these hiccups that have kind of like,
the main hiccup, I would say, is that to me, it is complete in that all the stories I think I want to tell are in the book. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it's exactly in the right order I want to tell it. And I don't know, because I'm one person, right? And I'm going to fill in the gaps myself, my own mind.
Especially since it's your stories in your life and your book. Right. So it's hard to know what someone else is reading and going,
right, exactly.
right?
I've had a couple beta readers, and they were excellent, and they definitely gave me some insight as to things that I had filled in. Of, oh yeah, no, I didn't fully explain that part because it's just obvious for me. Why isn't it obvious for you? Right. So the beta readers were excellent in that way, and I have fixed some of those. I think I'm at the point where I need to have an editor. I need to have somebody to work one-on-one with that can take what I have and tell me where I'm missing, what I'm missing. Because sure, could I go the self-published route and try to do it all myself? Yeah, it won't. I don't think it'll be as good a product because I know that I don't know what I don't know, right? And I'm okay with that. Like, I was a math major. The fact that I wrote a book is ridiculous as it is. But I think at the same time, I think I did a good job with it. And I think it will be an amazing book when it's where I want it to be. Right. And I know I need just a little bit, even, when we were chatting a while back, the hearing somebody else tell me how they felt about a different chapter, or how the order was like a little off for them, or even just, one thing that didn't make sense to them.
Didn't resonate.
I want to correct that.
Right.
I want to make sure that that's not how everybody feels for the next, ever that it's out there.
Right. So something I want to bring up from this conversation is, a lot of people think that self-published means that you did everything all by yourself and you didn't have any help. And that is not true. And I would say that especially if you're going to self-publish, you need an editor, because you're too close to your own work and you cannot see holes.
Mm-hmm.
You just can't. It's your work. And I think it's even more true when you're talking about in memoir, because you've lived it, you know what you meant by it. And someone else maybe isn't grasping that. And wouldn't that be a shame to have this amazing thing that you want to tell people and they're not getting it simply because you were unaware that you didn't say something that needed to be said?
Right.
That could be fixed in a paragraph.
Right. Exactly. Right. Yeah, I could have fixed this. Yes.
Yeah.
And to go back to what you were saying, that when I said I need an editor, I never was saying that I didn't think I needed an editor.
Right. No, I know that.
I think my hiccup is I want a good editor. Right. And so how do I know that first editor that comes around that's interested or I'm paying to do it is going to be what I really need to make this book the best it can be? And I have high hopes and high expectations for this book, and I think it can be something very good. So I don't want to shortchange myself. Right? Absolutely.
And so, I would say to anyone listening that if you're kind of in this space where you've got your first draft or your second and you've been working and you now feel like you need to move on to someone else, look for others who've had memoirs written that you've enjoyed, find out who their editors were, reach out to those people. I mean, because you don't want to just reach your hand into a hat and say, well, here's a name, because there are good editors and there are not good editors.
Right.
And you don't want to be stuck with a not good editor, because especially for someone who's not written before, you wouldn't necessarily know you didn't have a good editor until maybe it was too late, until you had spent a lot of time and money with this person and then realized, wait a minute, this isn't going well.
Right.
So it's kind of like dating online.
Exactly. And I'm at the point where I let anybody read it because I just want the feedback.
Right.
I just want to hear. But unfortunately, everybody that reads it says all great things. I'm like, great.
So that's something that I tell people also is, when you're beginning this writing and you're putting something out into the world and you feel like you're ready, you need to find someone who is two things: kind and honest.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Kind, because you don't want someone who just says, I don't like it. That's not helpful. Right? But you also don't want someone who just says, oh, it's beautiful, Slade, everything you've written is, because that is also not helpful.
Right. Exactly. And I can take criticism. You've read it, so you understand. Like, that's what I grew up on, was criticism. I thrive on it. Like, tell me what I'm doing wrong so I can fix it.
Help me fix it. Help me make it. One of the questions I have for you, especially because this memoir that you're writing, you're still very young. Okay, you're not.
Thank you.
No, I mean, it's not like we're talking end of life and you're looking back and nearly everyone you're talking about is gone. Sure. Right? You have children who are still children. Mm-hmm. You have a girlfriend that is still your girlfriend. Mm-hmm. You have an ex-wife and her spouse. You have at least what I was reading, your father is still alive. Is that correct? Yep. Okay. Yep. So there's a lot of people in your life that are still very much doing life, and you're very much exposing things. Mm-hmm. So my other question to you is how did you decide what to include and what not to include so that you were both honest and not hurting those people in your life that you didn't wish to hurt? Or embarrassing, like sure. I can imagine children are going,
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So first of all, I set out my book, the end of my book, the message I hope to convey with it is forgiveness, is love, is empathy and caring for others, right? That's the message at the end of the book. So sure, there's trauma, sure, there's negative moments, but when it's all said and done, can you look back and find the love? Can you look back and see the good times? Because that's really what matters. It's easy for us to latch onto the negativity, right? Those are easy to remember. Like right. I can remember so many things that didn't go right. Like I have a hard time remembering all the things that went right, right? And I want to switch that. I want to flip that because that's what's important. And so I didn't set out to write a hit piece. That's not what this is.
No,
for me.
No, and you didn't. Yeah. That's why I was curious, like how, because that's a hard line to walk, especially when you did have some trauma growing up. There were traumatic events that happened, and your marriage that didn't make it because everything was perfect.
Right.
I mean, so you have to talk about it. And yet when I finished reading it, I didn't feel like you hated anyone. I didn't have any sensation of you saying, these people are wicked and here I am, poor me. I wasn't that at all.
That's great. I'm glad that that's how it came out.
Yes.
That's how it should feel.
Right. But getting to that spot has got to be kind of a tightrope walk, because it would be very easy to list out everything that ever happened in your 18 years of marriage that wasn't good.
Sure. And in doing this, I went back and read old texts. I went back and looked at old emails, old pictures and things like that. And there were times, and I promised myself I wouldn't tear up, but I think I'm about to. But there were moments, even in reading those texts, that it was just so hard to relive.
Yeah.
But that's not the focus, right? That's not, those things mattered, those things happened, and that's why we got to where we were, sure. But really the reason even some of those texts came to be and the negativity that were in them came from just, we lost respect, right? There was a moment where we stopped seeing each other for being human beings that have flaws, and started seeing just the negative things that happened to each other, right? So, like I said, for me, the book is not about those negative things. It's about the positive things. Yeah, do I have to share some of the arguments? Yes.
Well, you have to, because otherwise it makes no sense.
It makes no sense. Well, why? Yes.
Well, why did they divorce if everything was so perfect, right?
But do I have to hammer
right
the specifics? No. You can get a pretty good taste of what we thought of each other in that moment, or what was going on in our lives, just by the way we're talking to each other, right? Yeah. The tone in the conversations between each other. Hopefully that came through. The short snide remarks, the quick hitting sarcasm that really is more meant to injure instead of make fun of.
And it's also meant to end the conversation quickly, because you just can't do another one of these. And
those things tell you enough about the picture without getting into the details.
Right.
You don't need to, talk about the things that she did or I did or anything that caused that lack of respect. That doesn't matter.
Right. It was there, and that's what you need people to understand. It was there, and it led to, which then led to.
Right. And
right.
I'm just at fault as
well, and I think that also that you did a really good job with that too, because as I was reading, I never felt like there was a big blame game going on where you pointed the finger and said, I was this perfect husband who did everything right.
Right.
And, she was the witch, and, right. It didn't feel like that at all. It felt like two people that had somehow grown apart to such a degree that finding a way back.
That was it, right? That you just nailed it. Finding a way back to that beginning.
It was, right? The road to that was, mathematically impossible, right?
and on the other note, my father, I wasn't so kind, right? I was a little bit more specific about the things that he did. And I think, I know he's never going to read the book. B, I love him dearly. So, and I know what he would want as much as he's going through dementia now.
Yeah.
So there are moments where he's, more with it and more aware. And there are moments where he's not. And right. People that have family members going through dementia understand that this is part of the process. So I've had some really good conversations with him that I didn't expect, which is awesome. And I'm very thankful for those. And in some of those conversations, we talk about the book and I know he couldn't handle it anyway. Like he couldn't comprehend it anyway, right. At this point.
Right.
So I feel a little bit better about sharing some of those things because I know it's not going to hurt him. He's not going to acknowledge it. And he's even told me that it's yours. It's your story. Like if I could go back and change some of the things I've done in my life, then I would, but I can't. And he's said that over and over in many different right. ways with relationships with siblings and my siblings and stuff. That I can't go back and change it. Like, so what are we going to do? We got to move on. Right. And I take that approach in life now. Like if I have an interaction at work that I don't get along with somebody, the next day I'm going to be like, hey, how you doing? How's your day? Like it's gone. Like, yes, I can be mad at you. I can call you a name on, one day,
Tuesday,
and the very next day,
right.
I'm going to be your friend again. And we're going to move right. on because there's no reason to hold on to that.
Right.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I'm not as kind to my father, but I think he would understand.
But even saying that, I never felt that it never felt even then like there was a blame because I could see the love. No. It came through with love. There were things that you pointed out that you were obviously unhappy that this is the way it went. Mm-hmm. And that you surely would have wanted it to be a different way as a child and as a young man and it wasn't. And that mm-hmm. was a very sad thing for you and made you angry often as well, but that you still loved him.
Sure. Yeah.
And so the love that came through did temper. It never felt like it was a bash your dad kind of event.
Yeah. And I don't look at him even knowing everything that's happened, right? I have that insight that you don't even
right.
have, right? Because
right,
I know
right.
all of
because,
it, right?
Right. I only know what you told me, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I still have so much empathy for the man, right? Because in that same way I say, we don't know what everybody else brings to the table. Like he had a childhood too, and his right. childhood wasn't ideal, right? And does that excuse everything he's ever done? No,
but it maybe explains it a little bit.
Yeah, like, okay, you're kind of acting on reflexes too. And I see that, and that gives me some compassion for you. That gives me a little bit, I can give you an out, right?
Right.
So I try to allow that as much as I can. Sometimes it's not easy, right?
No.
But
no, it isn't. But that ability to, one of the things that I like to say is I believe that they're doing the best they can given mm-hmm. what they have.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe their best stinks. Mm-hmm. Okay. But if they could give me more, they would.
Right. Exactly. And so to circle back to your question about like people being alive and writing about those people, I have a quick little anecdote about like, so my father is still alive. He was in the hospital recently with a pretty traumatic event, and the whole family, my siblings, say, all came out because we thought it was the end.
This might be it, right?
So we all came out, flew out within 24 hours, and we're sitting and we're in the ICU, and this is our sibling family. The ICU is full of people crying and upset, and we are sitting there laughing and hysterically telling jokes about my father, about each other, right? Because that's how we deal with trauma, and that's how we deal with our reality, is we tell jokes and we laugh and yeah, is it serious? Is there sadness in there too? Yeah, there's a little bit of sadness and humor at the same time, and it's okay.
Right.
And so I try to bring that into the book, but to bring it back to that day, one of my brothers, we were talking about the book, and I was explaining like, this is what it is, and my brother goes, I'm suing you. And I was like, he's like, hey, you're writing about us and without our permission. I was like, you're not in the book, which is a lie. And he goes, that's why I'm suing you.
That's right.
Right, but that's our humor. Like,
right.
I don't think my brothers and sisters, they're not in the book. Yes, is some of the things my father did part of their story too? Yes,
but that's theirs to tell.
But that's theirs to tell. And I don't. There's one chapter where my siblings are in the book, and it's just
I just know they're there.
Yeah, it's the story of going in an alcoholic family, and my therapist talking to me about the roles that develop in an alcoholic family, where there's the alcoholic, there's the enabler, which is mother, there's the hero, which I put as my oldest brother. He's the one that there's nothing to see here, everything's perfect. I have a perfect life, which he does have a great life. The emotional recluse, which is my other brother, who, like I said in the book, like, I don't know that I ever heard him say I love you until I heard him say it to his newborn son. He just is not somebody that shares those things, but yet I know they're there, right? Then there's the scapegoat, the person who gets in trouble a lot, to take the negativity away from the alcoholic. I put that as my sister. It's not really fair. She said so. But in the moment when I was learning those things from the therapist, that made sense to me. And then the fourth person is the cheerleader, or the person that likes to make jokes to make light of the situation, which is clearly me, and clearly trying to deflect with humor something that's actually a very serious and traumatic thing. So that's really the only chapter that has them in it. So it's not a whole lot of negativity there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, I just know that writing a memoir can be challenging, especially when other people have to be part of it. There's no way to tell your story as though you were alone, because you're not. And
yeah, there were moments where I wished I was like, that everybody had already gone and I could just tell it how I really
tell it how it was here. Right. But you had to temper it, but you had to think about other people's lives. And what you should and shouldn't say, and how much can you say, and do you really want to say more, knowing that they too will then have to live with your words?
Yeah, and I would say this, and I say this early on in my book, is I'm an open book. I will walk up to somebody on the street. I won't actually walk up to them, but if we were in conversation, I would tell you anything you want to know. I have no problem sharing the innermost detail of things that have happened to me. That doesn't bother me. I don't know it's probably something wrong with me, but
but it doesn't bother you.
It doesn't faze me. So writing a memoir seems very natural to me. Like, I have no problem sharing with you who I am and who I was and what's happened. I've made some mistakes in my life. There are things I wish I could go back and change. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So what's the point? So like, why am I hiding any of that? It doesn't matter. Really, to me, what matters is, when my life is done and what comes next, those people already know the story, right? They already know everything that's happened to me. So there's no point in hiding, because that's all that matters at the end of the day.
Right. Absolutely. So, Slade, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, talk with you about this book, talk with you about like some of the next steps, like, oh, I've got a great editor, I really want you to
Love
know
to
about
hear.
them, right?
Yeah.
What's the best way to reach you? What is the
So
best way to get up with you?
So I have a website. It's sladewilliams.com.
Mhm.
And then you can also find me on Instagram and X at gsladewilliams.
Okay, fantastic. I'll have all that in the show notes, guys. Normally at this point, I say run out and grab the book. You can't do that yet, but I
All right.
would say follow Slade because his book will come out, tentatively called Nonprofit. Not nonprofit like a nonprofit organization, but nonprofit like not a profit. And I enjoyed it, and I think that it is going to be something that most people will enjoy reading. And so I would definitely follow Slade, keep an eye on what he's doing, and when that book comes out, run out and grab it.
Awesome.
And I want to thank you. Yeah, I want to thank you for being with me today.
I appreciate it. It's been very nice. I'm so thankful to you for responding to my email and allowing me to come on.
Thank you for listening to Online for Authors, where I, Terry M. Brown, author of character-driven fiction and host of the podcast, introduce readers to characters they'd love to invite to lunch. Tune in next Tuesday for another podcast episode.